Holy fucking shit.
Yeah.
Ugh, this is making me so angry. I just like... okay, so what does this say now? I'm getting this fucking message.
We restarted the router.
YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming.
I wonder
what
the hell.
the fuck does that mean? God damn it. We'll experience buffering. So suddenly my shit is poor. Awesome.
We got a great connection.
Not anymore, we don't.
We don't?
Now it says poor.
It says poor connection?
We restarted the router and everything.
I wonder why it's a poor connection.
Yeah, the router needs a hard kick in the balls. It indeed does. Can we please? I mean, how is it looking on there? It's really,
bad.
It's really, really shitty.
Yeah.
God damn it. But this is making me so mad. This is making me so mad. What are we gonna do?
Okay.
I mean, I've restarted this fucking shit like 2 times. We restarted the...
Is there some kind of a setting for the camera that maybe we got it wrong?
It's not the camera. It's nothing to do with the camera. Let's hope those last 2 attempts wore down Steven Seagal's endurance threshold.
Yeah.
Zach says looks okay-ish to me.
It's just kind of fuzzy.
Somebody said long as we can hear. Maybe it'll improve over the course of the shit. I don't really know. Now I'm like wigging out about this. I mean, it's always
Sandra
behind.
says they don't receive enough video. Tom, they want more show. Shirt off.
Right?
These girls don't forget.
And then Mango says looking okay at the moment. Looks better.
Yeah.
So maybe it's getting its shit together.
It has something to do with our connection.
Yeah, our connection must be really shitty.
And
Looks and sounds good now. Audio and video looks great to me. Okay. Maybe it's okay.
I think it's a fucking Google problem.
Maybe I'm just like super paranoid now.
Yeah.
It's like now I don't want to talk about it. Well, I still want to talk about stuff, but now I'm like... Now I'll be like all in the middle of something and then it'll be like, oh... Get your shit together, internet.
Yeah.
I'm just like
we don't know what we're going to do about today's show.
I'm not having it. We're just going to have to like talk about the shit and it's like if it crashes, we're just going to have to fucking do the shit over again till we get the fucking show done. Yeah. You know. What are you going to do?
Some people are seeing it on 144p.
Well, no, Zach says I'm also watching it on 144p, but that's just me.
Okay.
Yeah. Mine is messing up and I'm in North Carolina. Some people said it's fine, but some people said it's not fine. So, I don't know. We're just going to do what we can do. And, I mean, we're not giving up on it. We're just saying...
It's that camera, right?
Yeah.
I wonder what happened if I unplugged that camera and put it back. Maybe
it's nothing to do with the camera.
You don't think maybe it needs a software update?
No.
Okay.
Everything's been updated.
Okay. Elizabeth says everything looks and sounds fine.
Yeah. Most people are saying it looks fine. Some people are saying it's buffering, but most people say it looks fine. Okay. Maybe it's fine. I don't know.
Is there any way to reduce the quality so that the stream is more reliable?
Probably, but I don't really... It's streaming fine on my end. Yeah, maybe try to edit together later on if it gets real... Yeah, I probably will. I mean, I usually do that with the audio anyway. Like, if I'm... Because I always post the audio and the video, like, as separate things. Like, because the audio goes to iTunes. So, because we had a couple times... I think when we were doing the Jonestown show, I think it dropped out, like, about 3 hours in, and we had to do... You know, the other hour, we had to, like, restart it. So I just, like, put the 2 pieces together. So, you know. Yeah, everybody out there just put it on low quality and then it'll probably be fine. Mango says the ATF will be busting through the door any second. Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. This happened so long ago. I don't really fucking know. It's, yeah, so are we ready to, like, talk about this now? I'm already on my second drink, you guys. I'm just getting so... He knows. I just get so...
Yeah, she gets too frustrated.
Yeah, but I told him, I was like, look, I have 3 computers and they're all slow as fucking shit. So it's like all day long while I'm working, this is all I'm dealing with is just slow connection, slow shit, like all the time. So it's kind of like... I'm one of those people, it's like, look, if I bought the shit, I want it to work the way it's supposed to work. And if it doesn't, then I get really... Well,
that's not even a year.
This laptop, we just bought it like a few months ago. And it's still... I don't know why it's doing that. It didn't used to do that.
Louis says I gave that router the Rona.
Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's your fault. Somehow.
Okay, so we're gonna we're done with all the shout outs and everything. We can pretty much start the show, right?
Yeah, let's start talking about Waco.
All right, we're bumping back up to most of the audience is back now.
Yeah, sorry about that, you guys.
Shit. going to talk about this is the case that got voted on.
Yeah.
Everybody wanted
So
David
this is our
Koresh
third cult in a row.
Yeah, David Koresh and the Branch Davidians over at Waco.
Yeah.
Which is a touchy subject. Maybe this is why our fucking stream keeps falling down. Maybe fucking ATF doesn't want us talking about it. But
I really doubt they would care.
well, and honestly, AI. They don't need to fucking be there.
There's millions of other videos
AI
about
shit.
this. My girl Stephanie Harlow did a four video breakdown of this, and each video was an hour and a half long.
Yeah.
Which is how many? That's 6 fucking hours, you guys. She did a 6 fucking hour, super detailed. I couldn't listen to all of it because I didn't have time, but I listened to like the last few parts of it. But yeah, so she did all that.
Says he's never heard of this case. Go ahead and
really?
Go ahead and unsub. Go ahead and unsub.
Well, now you have to. This happened in 1993, and if you're not from the U.S.,
yeah, maybe you weren't born.
If you were young or if you were not from the U.S., it might not have been a bit. I mean, it was a big deal in the U.S., but it was like a long time ago.
I was in the Army at the time. We were in Louisiana doing a GRTC, I think, Joint Readiness Training Center. It was fucking. It was like a mock war battle of like a Vietnam. It was just fucking, man, it was hot. Fucking mosquitoes and shit everywhere. And in between missions, we came back to the fucking flight line. They had C-5 Galaxies and aircraft, and everything was nice because we were fucking able to like clean up, change uniforms, getting fucking T-Rat food. And we heard about this case. It was going on at the time. And of course, you know, the government is highly fucking compartmentalized. And in the Army, we were like, what the fuck is going on here? They're attacking a bunch of Christians over guns? What the hell? And then there was we were hearing that there were tanks down there, or armored vehicles fighting them. And this was before the day of mobile devices. So you couldn't go online and see what was happening. There was none of that shit. You know what I mean? It was just all rumor. You know, at least when you were in the field, it was all rumor. You know, there were no TVs in the field. And when we came back, it was all over. And it didn't smell right even back in the day.
The thing about this case is there's really no... I kind of feel like both sides are... Like, I'm not excusing the ATF or the FBI because they fucked up big time. It was a huge clusterfuck.
She's just using military terminology now. Clusterfuck. That's when you have a bunch of men,
a general...
And then you have a bunch of men in military uniform all jumping on one another, trying to somehow fuck each other and the situation, so somebody comes out on top and you look like you're the hero, like you solved it. That's a clusterfuck.
Yeah, so that was a whole clusterfuck, and they made a lot of mistakes, which they did admit later on, and they actually use this... Now they have a whole report on it, like dudes that are coming into the ATF and the FBI. They're like, please read this because this is how you don't do it. So they do acknowledge that they fucked everything up.
That was a mistake, yeah.
Big time, yeah. But it was a lot of mistakes. I don't think they intended it to go the way it went.
Stream quality is looking really good.
Okay, so maybe it fixed itself.
Did it go back up? Check it real quick.
Let me see. I gotta move this other kind of shit. Well, it still says error, but that doesn't mean anything.
Okay.
You know, so... But on the other hand, David Koresh was a fucking loon. And I kind of feel like had he not taken over, because this is something before I really did a deep dive into this case, because I was only a few years out of high school when this happened. I remember it happening, but I was kind of like more interested in other things, I guess. Like I kind of knew the details of it, but I wasn't real super into it. So the more I read about this case, the more I was like, you know, had this just been the Branch Davidians, because the Branch Davidians have been around like a really long time. Like David Koresh wasn't, you know, he just came in like a few years ago. So it wasn't like they had this big thing. So I think a lot of it can be laid on his shoulders too, because he was such a fucking whack job. And I just think it was a perfect storm of bad shit was just going to go badly.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Here's the setup. You had Koresh and the Branch Davidians. The way the media was trying to spin this is that they were on some kind of paramilitary compound, that these people were some kind of a threat, and that they were basically, I don't know, resisting the federal government, or it was some shit. That was the narrative.
Well, there were child abuse and child sexual, and a lot of people that left the cult did say that shit was going on.
Yeah.
And David Koresh admitted that some of that shit was going on.
Yeah, but let's back up. That's happening in all churches, okay?
Well,
that's happening in Scientology.
I know that.
there was nothing. The only thing that was unusual about the Branch Davidians is that they were a Christian, apocalyptic kind of a fucking organization. They thought that the world was going to end, that the federal government was becoming a tyrannical empire, that they had basically kind of become against the American people. So they went into this defensive position in this compound to pray and to fucking run a damn religious cult. It's a Christian cult, but almost all Christian churches are cults when you really get down to it. They're little bitty churches. It's not like in Europe where a church is married to a government or anything. In the United States, a church is a private business some dude starts and buys a fucking building and, hey, come on in. This is my church. So they were in there waiting in doomsday. They had a whole ideology around it. They had a bunch of guns. Somebody's asking, what about the guns? What's the law say about that? Every member legally possessed a firearm. There's nothing...
Well, no, they had some things in there that were not. I mean, they said had it been just
no.
Some of the shit that they had, it would have been fine. But some of the shit that they had was illegal.
Lie, though. I saw the weapons manifest. It was a lie. The only thing in there that was kind of unusual, but it was still legal from what I remember, is they had some bolt-action 50 caliber rifles, which is they tried to make it sound like it was some kind of an artillery pieces. They weren't. That's real common today. Yeah, now there may have been a few felons in there that had access to weapons, but that doesn't matter because that's even in Scientology. Scientology's armed to the fucking teeth. They are. They got secret fucking bases out in the middle of the desert. All right? There's a lot of churches that are armed to the fucking teeth. But they legally own most of it. And, now there was a rumor that on the free winds, if you know what the free winds is in Scientology, that they may have had some fucking red-eye missiles, which was an infrared guided anti-aircraft missiles that you could fire off a shoulder. But there's some question of whether or not they would have been able to legally own that because they would have been in international waters. So they probably could own that. There's a lot of things about weaponry, international waters, and stuff in America. I just didn't believe most of what I heard from the feds. Now, the thing about the child abuse thing, the child abuse accusations came out after the fucking debacle happened. Like, they used that to justify it.
That is not the case.
I remember. Well, okay, look, let me tell you something.
That's not the case.
I was there. I remember how it was shown to us in the media and in the common culture of the time. It started small, and then in the end, they started to say, "Oh, well, they're a bunch of child molesters." That wasn't the case. It was kind of like the normal fucking child fucking diddling that happens in fucking in cults. They didn't approve of it. It wasn't part of their religion, but because they're real skeptical of legal authorities, they usually hide that shit. Catholic Church does it. Scientology does it. I'm just trying to say there wasn't really anything unusual about Branch Davidians. There was a lot worse stuff out there. That never got it. What it really was ATF trying to fucking try out new weapons and new training, trying to look good in front of the cameras. And I think that's mostly what it was.
Oh, I'm not denying that. I'm just saying that there had been some people that left the church earlier, particularly like in Australia. I think they even, because some of the members were Australian, I think even they escaped and they went back to Australia and they tried to get the Australian government to intervene because there was so much child abuse and, fucking underage kind of shit going on and the cult, and the Australian were like, well, we can't do get involved in that kind of stuff. So, and that was like years before that shit.
They were allegations, and evidently that's not really what they were, what the whole thing was about. The thing was mostly just about fucking showing off and PR and politics and.
Well, and the thing about it is that
they considered it a training mission that went bad.
That's really what it was. And the thing about the Branch Davidians was that they didn't really seem. Yes, they were an apocalyptic cult in that the sense they were in like an end time cult. They thought that the second coming of Christ was coming, but I kind of feel like they would have just gone about their merry way being a Christian cult if David Koresh hadn't come along. Yeah. I think David Koresh, who was a loon, kind of came along and amped all of that up. Yeah. And
he knew scripture real well, and he was very talented, and he was a very charismatic showman. People liked him when he started off, and that shit over time went to his fucking head. It's kind of like a lot of church leaders, like the founders of the Mormon church. As they got success, shit went to their head. They started fucking with other people's wives. They started marrying other people's daughters. They started taking more than one wife.
Well, he thought he said he was the second Messiah.
Yeah, that he was the second Messiah. They start believing their own bullshit. Okay. The problem was David Koresh. But if they wanted David Koresh, he went into town every fucking day. All you had to do was just wait for him at the store, and he just showed up.
That was one thing that
you could
bothered me about it. It's like, yeah, it does seem like I said, there are no like heroes in this situation. No. There really aren't. Like David Koresh is a lunatic, and the ATF obviously went about things the worst possible way they could have done.
They wanted to put on a big impressive show for their chain of command to justify all that money they spent on the fucking budget. That's what it was. It's politics. You could have, most people that were in that cult said that if you wanted to talk to David Koresh, if you were fed, you could have just walked up to the compound fucking and talked to him probably. Or you could have just been downtown and just arrested him and brought him in for questioning. But there was no reason to storm the damn gates because, fucking flash forward, they killed most of those people. Unfortunately, that's what happened. And it was a clusterfuck.
It was. And like I said, they still teach it nowadays to
don't be in a clusterfuck.
To new and then, employees to please don't do this.
And here's something else. You can't oppress other people, especially if it's a people that think they're being oppressed and they're willing to fucking sacrifice their lives over it. You're going to start playing into a fucking dangerous game. There was payback for this. Another fucking, later on, a military veteran fucking made a big truck bomb and blew up the ATF headquarters in vengeance for this. And what was that? Waco? No. What was that called? This is
Waco.
No, not. What was that called? They blew up a damn...
It was Timothy McVeigh.
Where'd that happen? Fucking,
That was the Alfred P. Murrah building.
Yeah. What state was that, though? What town was that?
It's been a long time.
Yeah,
it was a couple of years later.
McVeigh used this for justification of going after the ATF. Now they take this shit and they blow it into fucking out of proportion. He wasn't anti-government per se. He was anti-ATF. That was really what it was. Because the ATF had done some shit before that.
Yeah, Oklahoma, that's right.
Oklahoma City bombing, that's right. ATF did some other sorry-ass shit later on. Shot a dude's dog and then shot his fucking wife while he was holding the baby. Over some bullshit up on some white supremacist compound. They were trying to get away from everybody. Yeah, they weren't great people, but they just went in there basically and fucking tried to set the dude up and they shot his fucking family, the shitty thing to do. So there was a kind of, and this was the 80s. This was before internet. And it had gotten around that ATF threw its weight around and was corrupt and trying to make a name for itself as a federal agency. There were even Republicans that were referring to it as a group of jackbooted thugs. We're not talking about Democrats. Republicans were calling them jackbooted thugs. It's just that organization there. It's not as bad as it was, but.
Well, I think particularly after this happened, and like you said, the Oklahoma City bombing and all the shit that happened subsequently, because that wasn't the only one. That was just the one that
the famous ones.
That was the one that caused the most loss of life. So so I think that after that was such a PR disaster for them that I think they felt like maybe they couldn't get away with that shit anymore.
Not gonna defend Koresh.
I'm not defending either one of them. Like I said, it was a huge clusterfuck, and there was just no winners on it. Yeah. And it was just sad that so many people, like kids and stuff, were kind of stuck in the compound and couldn't or wouldn't get out.
Yeah. For me, having watched a couple documentaries on it, fucking had kind of lived through it at the time and knowing the way society was at the time. Koresh was a religious fanatic who couldn't think his way out of his own bullshit. He couldn't surrender. Not with what he believed. And
I mean, if you listen to some of his tapes, if you watch some of the video of him preaching and stuff like that, he definitely comes off as wildly unhinged.
Yeah, but he believes it. He's not lying.
Oh, he does.
He believes.
I'm not saying that. He just that's what I mean. He's unhinged. And it's kind of sad because the Branch Davidians prior to that seemed like, well, I don't want to say that because I'll get into that in a little bit, because this wasn't the first time that Branch Davidians had engaged in violence, so we'll get into that in a little bit too. But I do feel like him being there that really kind of took it in this big time apocalyptic, or like the world's going to end like right now. So it almost kind of like, so the ATF, I don't think they realized, some cult experts like Rick Ross and people like that, like tried to tell the ATF, look, you can't go in there guns blazing and stuff like that, because that plays into their narrative. Yeah. And they're just going to double down, and they're going to fight back against you. They'll kill themselves, like at Jonestown. It's like, we've studied this kind of thing. We know how these people think. It's like, that's what would happen. And they kind of went ahead and did it anyway. But like I said, it seems like, I don't know. It just seems like there was like terrible communication. It just seems like there was poor planning.
What would have been better had they approached him in town, just a couple of fucking ATF guys, and played good cop with him and said, look, we're not after you. We just want to make sure you're not hurting anybody.
To be fair, they did try to do that.
But he was so paranoid, he would not talk. But
yeah, they did try to do that.
I would have left him alone. I mean, because look what happened. You pushed him, and the cults tend to disintegrate on their own. That shit wouldn't have lasted long, I don't think.
I mean, like I said, even though the Branch Davidians as a group, and I didn't even know this, like, really, until I started looking into it, but they've been around since, like, the fucking 1930s.
Yeah.
And they'd actually, that compound where they live, Mount Carmel, they'd been there since then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but that fervent fucking David Koresh fucking element, I don't think that was sustainable. I think that he would have...
definitely not.
He would have driven most of the members out over time.
And he had prior to that. And honestly, some of the people that left, like I watched a bunch of different documentaries about this, and there was this woman that left, and she left before all this shit went down. She left when, spoiler alert, when David Koresh was kind of like, oh, well, I'm the second coming of the Messiah, and God told me that I could just have sex with all your wives and you're not allowed to anymore, because I'm supposed to have 24 babies. You know what I mean? So, that woman was like, no. So her and her husband left. And then later on, like after all that shit went down, they interviewed her, and she was just kind of like, well, she said, yeah, like kids were being beat and sexually abused in there and shit like that. She also said, because of what happened at the end, she's like, David Koresh is a coward and always will be one. So like I said, there's nothing happy about this. Everybody sucks. It's like, the only people I feel sad for are like the kids that didn't have any fucking choice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like they got stuck in the compound. The dogs that got shot.
Yeah.
That's all I feel bad for.
Save that for later.
Yeah.
Because what happened to the kids is fucking tragic.
I mean, they were all David Koresh's kids. Some kids did get out, like, because he did let some kids out. But his own kids, he's like, no, these are my kids, and I'm not letting them out. Because, like I said, he'd fathered a whole bunch of children with various women in the cult. Because he was the only one allowed to father children after a certain point. Because he was that kind of dude.
Juan Ortiz saying, I look cool with the cowboy hat. Man, this is my tiger stripe boonie hat. It's in fucking honor of Blaine. Fucking from Predator 1. He says, I'm a goddamn sexual tyrannosaur.
Tila says, how many people were on this compound? I think it was maybe right around 100. I think the death toll, when all was said and done, was 76, I want to say. I think it was 76 people. And several ATF agents were also killed. I think 4 or 5 of them, and then a bunch of them were wounded as well in the ensuing. And like I said, this wasn't just one thing. It was a raid, and then there was a 51-day siege. And then finally, like, I feel like the ATF guys were getting sick of sitting there because they were trying to negotiate with him, and he kept, like, fucking around and saying, hey, I'll let people out if you let me go on TV. So they let him go on TV, and then, like, he wouldn't let anybody out, and, like, so finally they were just kind of like, look, we're sick of this fucking shit. Can we just please go in there and try to get at least the kids out? And it just didn't happen like that.
Yeah, you got to understand that Koresh was young, and he was young when he became a preacher and started taking over the Branch Davidians. I think he was in his late teens when he started taking over, wasn't he?
Maybe early 20s, because
Early
I think
20s?
he was only 19 when he joined that church, and then like some shit happened later.
Yeah, and he was able to charm a lot of people, and the women liked him, like older women fucking liked him in the beginning.
Well, we'll get into that too.
And that kind of fucking helped him rise to power in this Christian cult. It was just very unfortunate. Fucking everybody.
Yeah, it was just a bad situation all around. Like, everything that could go wrong went wrong.
There's a lot of interviews of Branch Davidians who weren't crazy, who were there, and they'll tell you the whole fucking story and how they feel about it. Some people can get involved in these religions, and just like Scientology, really, and you can slowly get sucked in to believe in something that isn't true. And they thought the government was coming after them, and that the apocalypse was going to happen, and they were getting ready for the fucking post-apocalyptic world, and Jesus coming back and all that. Real, actually, kind of basic end time stuff. It's just that they were really planning for it, and they really believed in it, and Koresh was like an extremist. He was a religious zealot. He was
big time.
He was a zealot, yeah.
And like I said, I think that because this particular branch of, because like I said, the Branch Davidians are an offshoot of the Seventh Day Adventists, which had been around, from the 19th century. But I think the fact of him getting in there, because it was a schism, there's all this kind of stuff, which I'll get into. But I think the fact of him getting in there and him getting more and more delusional didn't help matters.
Yeah. And then there's another thing that if you're not an American and you don't know the federal system, the difference between a state system and the federal system, the United States is a lot like the EU. These states are kind of like independent countries. They can ignore the federal authorities if they want to. The federal authorities have their own fucking gig going on. And they can try to whip a state into line and do all kinds of things. But one of the weird things about the federal government is that it likes to increase its budget. And because you're making money, it's kind of a grift. Well, the U.S. has a bunch of fucking special operations units that are sitting around and they have to justify them. ATF is one of them. But then there's like 5 or 6 intelligence agencies that haven't really stopped any terrorism. They don't really do anything. They're like fucking jobs programs more than anything else. So ATF hadn't really done anything that gave them good PR in a long time, and this was really just a way that they could put on a good show and try to justify.
Well, and I will note too that this happened on the back of a couple of PR disasters, one of which being Ruby Ridge, the other one being they were being sued by a lot of African American, ATF agents and women that were claiming discrimination. So they were maybe looking for something that was going to be a win and that was going to make them look better to the public and like justify, you know what I mean? So,
justify their existence.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So it's like, so they had some of that shit in the past. So you can see like how, like I said, this was like a perfect storm of like shitty things.
You have to understand how ridiculous the existence of the ATF is. It's alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. They handled interstate taxation of fucking of tobacco. There's not much there, you know what I mean? There's not much, you know what I mean? People don't really smoke all that much anymore. Then you had alcohol. They were doing alcohol taxation. Well, they also had all these SWAT teams, this paramilitary wing. All right, so there's no real need for that when it comes to raiding alcohol places and fucking tobacco fucking companies. So they started to get on these fucking firearms. The United States has something called the NFA, which is the National Firearms Act that was passed in the 1920s during the gangster era. And really the only thing NFA laws really worry about are if you have a machine gun, you have to register it. If you have a sound suppressor, it has to be registered. A rifle can not have a barrel shorter than fucking 16 inches. A pistol cannot have a buttstock. Not much money there. That's not a really good grift. I mean, who cares how long your fucking rifle barrel is? What, if it's 16 inches and then you move it down to 14 inches, it's more deadly? No, it's less deadly. And then what, you say, well, it's a concealable rifle. What is it? It's more concealable than a pistol? No, it's the whole ATF thing is, when it comes to the firearms, is ridiculous, and even the ATF knows it. They've really relaxed on a lot of that shit. Right now, with the fucking things called fucking arm braces and shit like that, the ATF doesn't give a fuck how long your barrel is. Unless they don't like you. If you fucking, let's say you have what's called an AR-15 pistol, and you put a fucking buttstock on it instead of an arm brace, you've now changed a fucking pistol into a rifle. and they're going to want to give you 10 years or something for that. It's stupid. It doesn't have any, it's just regulations. It doesn't have anything to do with reality. So, if you overturn that NFA Act, the fucking ATF will fucking vanish because they're just not needed anymore. It's just another useless fucking federal bureaucracy. It's a jobs program is what it is. And you can use it to go after people you don't like. That's, we're going to use these little regulations to go after, I don't know, this drug cartel. No, not that drug cartel. We've kind of invested in that one. Go after that drug cartel. You guys know the deal. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Okay, I haven't even started my notes yet.
Start the notes. Yeah.
So let's talk about David Koresh, which until I started researching this, I did not know what that was. That's not his real name. That's not his real name. His name is actually Vernon Howell. Now, he was born in 1959 in Houston, Texas. Now, his mom was 14 years old. So she gets pregnant. His dad, Bobby Howell, took off because he met another teenager that he liked better than David Koresh's mom, whose name was Bonnie. So he's just like, bye, pregnant girlfriend, who was 14. I'm off. So David Koresh, we'll just call him that, even though that's not his real name, actually never met his biological father. Now, after his father took off, like I said, his mother was very young, and she had a baby, so she very quickly hooked up with another dude who she thought would help her out. But this dude also turned out to be a piece of shit. He was a violent drunk. So then she gets at this stage, she's, the kid's 4 years old, and she's like, look, I can't deal with this shit anymore. It's like, you got the violent boyfriend, you got this little 4-year-old kid, you can't really deal with it. She's only fucking 18 years old at this point. So she leaves him with the grandmother, Earlene Clark. So he's with the grandmother for 3 years, and then she marries this other dude, a carpenter named Roy Haldeman, who was also an abusive piece of shit. And so they ended up having another son together named Roger, who was, David Koresh's half-brother. Now, David Koresh has said that his early childhood, he seemed like he wasn't stupid. He was actually really intelligent, but he did have some learning difficulties. I don't think they would have called it this back then, but from what I know, it sounds like he was probably dyslexic, because he said stuff like reading and writing was an alien language, so it was really difficult for him. So I think he was probably dyslexic. So at school, a lot of the kids didn't really like him. Plus he was real into religion, which a lot of kids thought was weird. And so they called him names. They usually called him Vernie, or they called him Mr. Retardo, which is nice. But you know how kids are. So they called him that when he was a kid. So he ended up dropping out of high school in his junior year. Now, when he's 19 years old, he starts a relationship, which 19 and she was 15, which if you're keeping score, that's kind of considered statutory rape. I guess you're depending on what state you're in. She ended up getting pregnant. Now, he said that he had been born again in the Southern Baptist Church, but then later on he joined his mother's church, which, like I said, was Seventh Day Adventists, which the Branch Davidians are an offshoot of the Seventh Day Adventists, which I'll get to a little bit in a minute. Now, while Koresh got all into this new church, he started lusting after the pastor's daughter, who again was just a teenager. And apparently, here's something that happened. He said that while he was thinking about it, he opened the Bible for God to give him a sign whether this was okay.
Okay, hold on, I gotta hear this.
And the Bible said, and he opened it to Isaiah 34:16, and the passage saying, "None should want for her mate," which he took as just, he's like, that means that I should go get her.
It means hit it.
Yeah, that's how he interpreted it, because of course he did. So basically, so he thought this is a sign from God. So he goes to the pastor and he says, "Hey, God told me that I should marry and impregnate your daughter. Not surprisingly, the pastor was not a fan of this idea. So the pastor was like, not only get out of my sight, but also get out of, don't ever see my daughter again, and also get out of this fucking congregation, you fucking pervert. So that's how well that went. So 1981, he's kind of like drifting around. He was kind of like just a drifter, like a hippie type dude. So 1981, he moves to Waco. Now, at this stage, he had joined the Branch Davidians. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the Branch Davidians are actually an offshoot of the Seventh Day Adventists. Now, their technical name is the General Association of Branch Davidian Seventh Day Adventists. Now, even though the Seventh Day Adventists have been around, as I believe, since the 19th century, this particular offshoot or sect of them has been around since 1955. Now, this particular sect of the Branch Davidians, the famous one, that was involved in the Waco raid, that was formed in 1955, as I mentioned, by a dude named Benjamin Rodin. Now, the General Association, this is very complicated, I know. The General Association of Davidian Seventh-day Adventists was actually established by a Bulgarian dude named Victor Houteff, I think is how you pronounce it, back in 1935. This guy, okay, so this makes me laugh, so I have to mention it. He had written a bunch of tracts or like religious pamphlets or whatever, and he called them the Shepherd's Rod, which, make your penis jokes now. And he wanted the Seventh-day Adventist Church to be reformed. So the place where the Waco siege famously took place in 1993, the compound at Mount Carmel, had actually been purchased by that dude, like back in the 30s. You know what I mean? So that had been like a Seventh-day Adventist / Branch Davidians compound for a really long time. So it wasn't just David Koresh, hey, I came up with my own cult or anything like that. This was a religious tradition that had been going on for a while. David Koresh was just kind of a latecomer to it. So, I just wanted to establish that. So they bought this compound back in the 30s because they thought that the second coming of Christ was imminent, and the compound was where they were going to like prepare for it, because they thought the end of the world was coming, Christ was coming back, all that kind of like apocalyptic shit that a lot of these kind of Christian cults believe in. So the Mount Carmel Center goes back that far. Now, Benjamin Rodin, the guy that started the Branch Davidians, he died in 1978. Now, at this point, Koresh, he had like started a band because he wanted to be a rock star, kind of, And if you see like videos of him, he like wrote all these songs, and he's like fucking, he thinks he's fucking, Jim Morrison or some shit, whatever. So he had actually been playing his guitar and singing at this Mount Carmel Center, of the Branch Davidian headquarters outside of Waco. Now, he was there for a couple of years. Now, in 1983, he started saying that he could see the future, or that he was a prophet. Now, no one's entirely sure whether this is absolutely true or not, but it does seem to be that when he arrived at the Branch Davidian compound, the woman who was running it, Lois Rodin, who was the widow of Benjamin Rodin, and was at this point in her late 60s or early 70s, that David Koresh actually started hitting that. Which, like I said, not judging, even though he was only 20, he was in his early 20s, and she was pushing 70 at this point. So most speculation says that he started a sexual relationship with her at this point. Probably because he wanted to run the shit. Because he had already started to, at this point, he'd already started to like feel like, hey, I'm going to run this. Or, hey, I'm a prophet. Hey, I'm Jesus, whatever. Now, he started to say that God told him that him and Lois, who again was in her late 60s, should have a kid. Which I don't know how that's going to work because she's in
Spirit
her...
of God.
I mean, God's got to intervene on that
Spirit
shit.
of God.
Because that's way past menopause.
The Old Testament is rife with it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sarah wasn't Sarah like 90, and all the fucking kings were like fucking.
Yeah.
They were hot on this old chick. She's like 90. I think her name was Sarah.
It might have been, if I'm remembering my.
Yeah, and he
correctly.
told the king that it was his sister instead of his wife, so because he was afraid they'd kill him and take the woman. Oh, it's my sister. So king started hitting the sister, and then he found out. God told him somehow that
Bible's
you just committed adultery. And he's like, how could you do this to me? Here, take all this money and shit and run. Get out of here. I don't know. That's some Old Testament morality there. I don't really get it. If you accidentally hit some married chick, it's on you. You're now dirty. You're ritually unclean. And you go, how could you let me do that? That's some fucking wild shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she's 90 and
you
hot
can tell
as shit.
Dudes wrote the Bible.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
This is some silly ass stories. She's 90, hot as fuck. The king's after it. Think about that.
That was some hot 90-year-old. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Maybe back in the old days.
They lived longer.
I guess.
They lied more.
Well, yeah, I think it's that second thing.
Let me go ahead and get this out of the way. We've had Dr. Price on, and fucking who's a really good fucking mythicist. The Old Testament and the New Testament, none of that is historical. Not that those are all just tales.
Obviously.
Tall tales.
It's like little bits of history put in just to give it some spice and make it seem like it's a little bit realistic.
Well, they mention real people.
Right, that's what I mean.
But that didn't happen.
Just as a little sprinkling, but most of the shit in there did not happen.
No.
Not in real life.
No, and there was a time when I wanted that shit too.
And that's okay. It's okay. It's just stories.
The fucking the plagues of Egypt. No, I understand what it is. They had the fucking red tide. It came in and then, killed all the fucking fish and then the frogs and then the fucking, you know what I mean? And then, they fed all that fucking contaminated grain to the firstborn and they died. No. What it is that it's like none of that happened. It was like a Toho Japanese monster movie. That's what they're talking about. And it's the God of the fucking...
The Godzilla Bible.
The God of Israel using the gods of fucking Egypt like a whipping boy for all the world to see that fucking Yahweh is superior to the fucking Egyptian gods. That's all it is.
Yeah. It's just my dick's bigger than your dick.
My dick is bigger than your... My gods are better than your gods.
That's exactly what it is. Yeah. I mean, when you look at it through that... Like I said, I'm not denigrating it anyway. I mean, I love mythology. I love all that kind of stuff. But you have to understand, like, the cultural context of the time that shit was written. Yeah. And everybody has a reason for coming up with those types of stories. That's why I find them, like, really fascinating to study. Because you can... By studying a culture's... mythologies, you can understand what they found valuable.
Yeah, that's their value system.
Yeah. So that's like, and it tells you a lot more than their actual laws do.
It's multi-purpose, though, too. It's very much kind of like the MCU or good Star Wars writing. It's, well, I don't laugh at it because I think that's good mythology, too, if it's well written.
Yeah.
It's something for you to believe in to help you face life and death. Because you're going to die. We all die.
Yeah.
All right. And... avoiding death isn't always the fucking primary thing. Sometimes giving your life for something that will fucking be a greater good later on, that might be the right thing to do. You never can tell. Everything's situational. Yeah. It's all situational.
You just got to go with the flow, like I said earlier.
Yeah. Well, they were making moral judgments. Those kamikazes that threw themselves in their planes on the deck of American aircraft carriers, you think those fuckers are crazy. No, they weren't. That was a totally rational trade. From their point of view, an invading army of fucking white barbarians were heading directly towards Japan to put those big pink dicks on those fucking girls. And they had to stop that at all fucking cost.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to think in this. I think this is why I'm fascinated by cults and all that kind of stuff, is that because if you think that what you're doing is the right thing, or you think that it's for the greater good, then you can do all kinds of crazy shit.
Yeah.
All kinds, which from the outside
might look
seems crazy, but everybody, like most people, unless they're like completely Looney Tunes, most people do have actual reasoning and a reason for doing what they're doing.
It wasn't crazy from the Japanese point of view.
That's what I'm saying. Because they had a reason.
The Japanese invaded China and fucking they did something called the Rape of Nanjing, or also the Rape of Nanking. And what they did to the Chinese people was fucking worse than what even happened to the Jews. All right, it was worse than that. I don't know if it was the same amount of people. I think it was less people. But what they did there was fucking horrible. All right, and they took pictures of it. And they were carrying pictures of it in their knapsacks out there on those islands.
It's like, why
they thought we were going to do the same thing to their women. So, the Japanese of the 40s are not the same Japanese of today.
Well, and they were
totally
just
different.
They thought they were doing the right thing. I mean, you know.
Yeah. They were laying down their lives for their fucking family and their women back home.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. And I think that's what makes, people that history would see as villains, and I'm not saying there aren't villains. They aren't villains, because obviously a lot of them are. But they had reasons for doing what they were doing. And they were understandable reasons. And maybe that's kind of like uncomfortable for people to think about, but they did actually have justifications for doing what they were doing. And it wasn't always like crazy justifications. Sometimes it was understandable justifications.
Zach's in there talking about big pink dicks. He's dick-centric.
Yeah, you just made him go off on a fantasy tangent.
Yeah, he's going on a dick tangent.
Well, when you said that, I kind of had a very brief...
He's like, whoa.
Well, I had a brief picture of just like a bunch of pink dick, like on popsicle sticks or something like that, but it was like very brief.
It's psychological warfare. Put the pink dick imagery into the mind of the audience.
Because I don't know. I feel like dicks
are
not that aesthetically pleasing.
It's
so it's kind of like
it's all fun.
It is all funny. I can't believe we started out this show talking about sounding.
Yeah,
but yeah,
that was on you. That was your fault.
Was it?
Yeah, it was on your fault.
Everything's my fault.
It's a show, Jenny. It's a show, and I'm gonna fucking clown around on the show.
He's gonna clown.
Yeah,
that's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
stop your clowning around.
Oh my God, you guys! For some reason,
better think of your future.
Yesterday, when I was this is what happens. I was in the shower, and for some reason, I was like, every now and then, because I sing to Pookie all the time, and I think I've mentioned this on the show before. So I try to like insert her name into like various songs where it fits. And I can't believe that and it just like came to me in a flash yesterday morning that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe I never sang Message to You, Rudy with Pookie in it, because it fits perfect, right?
Pookie.
And then, so I thought of it, and then I told him, because I started singing it to her, and he just like started cracking up. And then he's like, oh my God, that's fucking hilarious. Yeah. And so now I can't get that shit out of my head.
I like the original.
They're both good. They're both good. But yeah, so like now every time she comes in the room, like, stop your pookling around. Yeah. Better think of the future.
Yeah. Lest you end up in jail.
I'm like, Pookie's not going to jail.
And you will suffer. Oh, Pookie. A message for you, Pookie. What's his name? Livingstone?
I can't remember. You looked it up on YouTube because I knew the specials version, and then I knew that it was a cover, and that but I'd only heard the original like a time or two. Yeah. Which like a reggae song. But yeah, so that's what we've been singing to her for the last couple of days.
DJ Maniac goes, yeah, it's saying to me, yeah, it's a podcast. Of course it's a podcast.
Getting off on a dick tangent.
Yeah.
That always happens. Well, And I'm about to tell you some more shit that's going to put you on another...
Kat says, I love it. I just turned this on, and this is the conversation going on.
Pookie will never be in jail. We're never going to put Pookie in jail.
She's talking about dicks.
Well, yeah, I know.
Talking about dicks. Yeah.
People should drink more. I agree.
We got a pretty big crowd going on. Everybody, please...
I walked with the Pookie. Oh, that's a good one, actually. Is that a Rocky Erickson song?
What's that?
I walked with the Pookie. Like I walked with a zombie. That's Rocky Erickson, right? You don't know.
Oh, look, Tila's got a message in a Pookie.
Oh my God, that's a good one too.
No. Pookie in a bottle.
No, don't put Pookie in a bottle. I also thought of like Goodbye Pookie Tuesday, but I was just like, well, I don't want to feel like I'm saying goodbye to her because she's not going anywhere. She better not be going anywhere.
T knows a deal. T knows a deal. T even likes reggae.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see. She knows the old reggae.
This is for some reason I do this kind of shit all the time. I don't know if Pookie likes it or not. She puts up with it. Okay? Yeah. She tolerates it. Because I kind of like try to think of new stuff all the time, like to keep her entertained. Thank you, Victor. Big pink dicks. Mm-hmm. $5 for big pink dicks.
Yeah. We'll put that in the pink dick pile.
In the pink dick fund.
Yeah.
Which I don't even know what we're going to use for that.
Going straight to Japan.
Okay, so you guys. Okay, so David Koresh is allegedly hitting this almost 70-year-old woman, which, like I said, no judgment. But yeah, so Lois, who is still running the shit at this point, she decides that she loves the Dickens so much, allegedly, that she's gonna let David Koresh, like, just say whatever the fuck he wants at the Branch Davidian church. So he has his own message, which is called, and again, we're talking about dicks, god damn it. It's called The Serpent's Root. Because of course it is.
Pookie went down to Georgia. How about that one?
Looking for Pookie in all the wrong places.
Yeah, Pookie went down to Georgia. I can't remember.
Oh my god. Alright. You didn't even hear what I said about the serpent's root.
Go ahead and say it again.
The serpent's root.
I was a little bit out of it.
That was the name of David Koresh's message? Or like
It's not his dick. That's not
the name of it. Well, I'm sure it probably was.
The root of his serpent.
Knowing,
he got that shit from fucking Snake Plissken.
That's what I'm saying. Well, no, well.
Snake Plissken had the. When
yeah,
he
this
took
was
his
83.
shirt off.
83.
When Snake took his shirt off, he had a tattoo of a fucking cobra coming up under his waistband like it was his dick.
Subtle.
Yeah. Had this been some shit from the late 90s, he'd pulled that shit down a little bit so you could see some of that dick root. They'd have got rid of that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Well, everybody likes it. In a way, like, the dick root is actually kind of, like, sexier than the actual
Than the actual dick, just the root.
Because it's just, like, suggestion. Like, because
Yeah.
it's just like a horror movie. It's
Yeah,
always better when it's just suggestion. You don't see the actual thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I guess.
You guess.
You're
not a girl. You don't know.
I don't know.
Ectoplasm-esque. What are you guys drinking?
Shit. I got. What are you drinking?
I am drinking. That's
a screwdriver.
That's a screwdriver.
Yeah.
Well, and shit, it's almost empty. This is my second one. Well, and by second, I mean like fourth because that was like a double.
I'm drinking spiced rum, and on top of that, like it's like 1 part spiced rum, 1 part pineapple, and 1 part orange.
Yeah.
It's good. Yeah, it's good. Real good.
You probably need to make me another drink in a minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, serpent's root. That's what I was talking about. Which, like I said,
dick.
That's what. Yeah, well, obviously. Yeah. And considering the shit that he got into later on, I'm sure like his whole fucking life revolved around his dick. So, so he starts giving this series of sermons called The Serpent's Root. Some of the people in the group were like, yeah, not so much. Some of the people were into it, but you know, so it was like a big controversy about it. Now, at this point, Lois, as I said, who was an older lady, she had a son named George Roden. Now, George Roden, also a lunatic, spoiler alert, he kind of had planned that he was going to be the next leader of the group, like after his mom croaked. You know what I mean? So that's going to come into play later on as well. So he did not surprisingly, did not like David Koresh because he just saw him as this complicating factor. He was an interloper. It's like, hey, I'm supposed to take over the shit. What the fuck are you even doing in here? You're just kind of like dividing the flock or whatever. So there was like a lot of controversy there. Now, at this stage, David Koresh, who, like I said, he wasn't named that yet, but I'm not calling him that because I don't want it to be too confusing. He said that God told me that I should marry this girl named Rachel Jones. Now, I can't remember, but I think Rachel Jones was of age. And that might be the only time that I can say this about this, because a lot of the women that he married were teenage girls. So, but I think this girl was 18 or over, so maybe it's okay. Just this one time. So he marries her, and then... Out. Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
Lead route.
She better be good.
She'll be all right.
Better think of your future.
Yeah, better think of your future.
We've been
or you wind up in jail.
Yeah, we keep telling her. Except then I say to her, it's like, you're not going to be in jail. It's okay. She doesn't care. So he marries this woman, Rachel Jones. Like, legally, apparently. Now... Okay, so at this point, there is a power struggle between David Koresh, who, like I said, has probably allegedly banging Lois, the elderly leader of the cult. So there's the thing between him and her son, who was supposed to be the heir apparent. Right? So there's a power struggle. George Roden says, hey, like most of the people that are in this fucking cult are all about me. So you guys need to fuck the fuck off into the sun.
Fucking the fuck off.
Yeah. Well, you know.
Okay.
So basically, he wasn't fucking around either. He basically had them at gunpoint. Is like, get off my land, motherfucker. It was kind of like that kind of situation. So everybody that was David Koresh and everybody that followed him, basically were like, we're gonna shoot your asses if you don't piss off. So they all pissed off. Now, it was him and about a couple dozen people that were sympathetic to him, and they fucked off to Palestine, Texas, which is about 90 miles away. And they kind of established their own little base camp. It was kind of like a shitty camp. It was a real camp. It was just like fucking tents and like a couple of fucking trucks and shit like that. They didn't have any water, like running water, nothing like that. So, they just had a couple buses and whatnot. And they lived there for 2 years. Now, during this 2-year period where they were just basically living out in the fucking forest, him and his 24 followers, he decided he's gonna go and like recruit some new people. Where did he get money to do this? I don't fucking know. But he goes to California, he goes to the UK, he goes to Australia, he goes to Israel, and he actually ends up getting a few followers and bringing them back with him. Like I said, where is he getting the money? They're living out in tents and he has money to like fucking fly to Australia? How the fuck did that happen? And bring people back with him?
He had money.
I guess.
Yeah.
Even though his mom had him when she was like 14. She didn't have any fucking money. Where the fuck he get money from?
I don't know.
This is mystifying. I'm like, shit, I can't afford to fly to Australia and I have like 3 jobs. But you know what I mean. So I'm just saying. So at this point, he ended up traveling to Israel. And then while he was in Israel, he said that he had a vision that he was the modern day Cyrus, like the Persian king that was in the Bible or whatever.
It's nothing for these people to save up money and do shit. They're passing around collection plates. Man. They don't have expensive tastes. They're not paying. They're tax free. The money goes to mostly the church. You can do a lot of fantastic shit with church money. That's how he got there.
I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe he stole some money from like the old lady, or like they fucking. So maybe they just panhandle in the street or something.
Other people have money.
I guess.
You know what I mean? Religious people have money.
Crazy. Mm-hmm. I'm in the wrong gig, I guess.
Yeah. You probably are.
I keep saying I should probably start.
Well, going to Australia and back, and this is back in the 80s.
Kat says Cougar's got money.
Maybe 2,500.
Yeah, maybe Lois gave him some.
Maybe 2,500. Back then, that's not a lot.
That's true.
Back then.
I don't have that much though.
Actually, less. That'd have been less. Probably more like 1,500 if you fucking booked it right. Because it cost us about 1,500. In the 80s, it was about 1,500 to go to Brazil.
Okay.
So yeah, not that bad.
Mark says there was a cougar that called my coworker white chocolate 2 years ago.
Damn.
You got to tell that story. That sounds intriguing. Okay, so at this point, he has this vision where he thinks that he's the modern day Cyrus, like I said, from the Persian king from the Bible. So it's at this point that Vernon Howell, which was his original name, he actually filed to change his name in 1990, and he legally changed his name to David Koresh. Now, Koresh is the biblical name of Cyrus the Great, the Persian king, as I said. He's called a messiah for freeing Jews during the Babylonian captivity. And his first name, David, he took because, again, he was trying to be seen as a messiah, and he was like, oh, I'm from the line of David, just like all the Jesus, you know what I mean? So he took that as his name. So like I said, that wasn't his legal name. He changed it in 1990. Now, what ended up happening, so him and his followers are living out in the fucking woods in tents and whatnot. Now, Lois, the older lady who was, running the Branch Davidians back at Mount Carmel, she died in 1986. Now, at this point, all of the Branch Davidians that are living out in these tents are like, I wonder if we could, go back in there and, take over that shit. Because, she's gone now, and it's like, now we can have, we could fight it out with her son or whatever for power. And it seemed like in the interim, since Lois had been so positively disposed toward him, that a lot of people that still lived at the Mount Carmel compound started to become more sympathetic to David Koresh instead of Lois's son. So, as I said, there's kind of like a schism going on. So, this part of the story, you guys, this makes me laugh so hard. So, late 1987, I love this. Like, fucking Lois's son, he's, George, he's kind of like, his, support in the group has started to decline. So David Koresh decides he's going to come back and, like, challenge him. Now, they have to have some way of, solving this challenge. Do you know how they did it?
How's that?
Oh my god, this is so good. This is so good. Okay, so they decide to have a contest over which one of them could raise someone from the dead. They're gonna raise someone from the dead.
Well,
and
yeah.
whoever can do it is gonna be the leader of the cult. I fucking love this so much. This made me laugh
awesome.
so hard. That's what I mean.
That's evidence. Okay?
It's fucked up, but it's like, this is just so funny to me.
Exhibit A. Exhibit A.
I brought a corpse back from the dead.
No, that's not what I mean.
Win.
Exhibit A on the fact that they actually believed their shit. All right? They believed that they could bring somebody back from the dead.
That's what's so funny.
If they didn't actually believe that, they would have never made that decision.
Yeah.
Even Scientologists don't do that.
Yeah.
So that tells you that they believe their
Well,
shit.
big time. They were true.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it funny to me, because they actually really thought that they could dig up a corpse. Because you guys, okay, so that was the contest.
Necromancy.
Yeah, that was the contest. We're gonna, you see who can, like, bring somebody back from the dead. So what happens? So George challenges David Koresh to, a resurrection challenge, contest or whatever. Oh my god, I love that. That needs to be a game show. So this is how serious fucking George was about this. He exhumed a corpse. I think it was from either somebody they knew or somebody that was a former member that had died. And they went so far as to exhume a corpse from the cemetery, and they brought it back to the compound, and they're basically like, whoever can bring this, I think her name was Anne. They're like, whoever can bring this woman back from the dead is the leader of the Branch Davidians. She's like the fucking Highlander. I don't know what it is. It's just really, really funny to me.
So who was it? Who were they going to bring back from the dead?
Like I said, I think it was a former member called.
Okay.
It was
They knew
a
they were
lady
buried?
like Anne.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, some of the former members, I think they buried like on the land. Although they said she was in a coffin, so maybe it was from a cemetery. I'm not real sure.
So they actually dug her up.
Yes.
Dug her ass up
And brought her
coffin.
back to the compound, and her like he threw down. George did.
How long has she been dead?
I don't know.
Fuck.
Yeah, it's like, is she fresh? That seems like it would be harder if she
matter.
wasn't fresh.
Power of God.
I mean, obviously it's not going to matter because you're not going to resurrect
the power
anybody.
of God fucking can do anything. So I'd imagine she could be years dead, just bones, and God could bring her back.
She'll bring her back like one of those Ray Harryhausen skeletons from
Well, what's the
fucking
trip?
Seven Voyages
Is that-
so bad.
That's how faithful they were. In the
I
way that
know. Well, that's what, I don't know. This just like, I don't mean to be an asshole. This just like makes me laugh so hard.
That's why you don't want to go fucking with them people. When they believe some shit like that, hell yeah.
Yeah,
You better
they
watch
actually
out.
really did believe.
They really did believe it. Yeah.
That, well, okay. Well, at least George believed it because he actually did dig up the fucking corpse and everything. And he's like, hey, Koresh, hey, bitch, come here and resurrect. We'll see who can resurrect and who gets to be the like leader of the Branch Davidians, right? So what David Koresh ended up doing, though, was that, hey, here's an in. I can go to the authorities and accuse George Rodin of digging up a corpse, because that's like a crime.
Yeah.
So,
it's not a very strong fucking... you don't get much for that, though.
well, no, but
Yeah.
he
It's not even
wanted...
grave
Well,
robbery.
he wanted any kind of, like,
Yeah.
in to get back in. Because, like I
Yeah.
said, they'd been exiled.
Yeah.
So he's
'Cause
like,
we looked that up in other cases. It's not even grave robbery if you don't fucking steal anything from it. I think it's more like improper treatment of a corpse.
yeah,
I
it's
think
like,
is what it is.
yeah, it's like you get...
You dug up
You
the
might get
coffin and
fined
took
or
it around.
something, but
Yeah.
it's not like a huge deal because, I
No.
mean, I hate to be like, a dick or anything, but it's like if you didn't take anything from the corpse, it's a corpse. It's not, you
Yeah.
know, it's not like you're having sex with a real person or stealing shit that is valuable or anything like that. So it's not like, it's not like really that much of a crime, I guess.
A few months maybe.
So, but Koresh, I think he felt like, oh, well, this is the only way that I'm going to get back in there, because that's, at least I can get the authorities out here, which seems like a, kind of a dick move, but whatever. So he's like, I'm going to call the authorities and tell him that this dude, like, dug up a corpse and maybe I can get him in trouble. So basically, he goes to the authorities and files charges. But the authorities were like, yeah, well, we need some proof of that. Like, you need to go and, like, take a picture of him, like, exhuming the corpse, or, like, have a picture of the corpse. So, like, we don't believe you. You know what I mean? It's like, that's kind of, like, minor, so we don't really want to waste our time with it. So, basically, what he did, and like I said, this is what I was talking about when I said that this whole Branch Davidian thing, this wasn't the first time that violence had erupted, like, within their shit. So he's like, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. He's going to take 7 of his followers and he's going to go to Mount Carmel and he's going to get evidence of the corpse being exhumed. So he takes 7 of his followers. They're all armed. And he goes to Mount Carmel and, not surprisingly, big gunfight broke out. Because, that's how religious groups do. They just, like, fucking shoot at each other. And that's what happened.
Well, actually, that's happened many times.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. It's really
Church
not
of
that weird.
Saints was all about shooting.
It's not that weird.
Yeah, that's not that weird.
So, yeah, so they all go, they're all shooting at each other. Nobody got killed or anything. But sheriff shows up. Roden had actually been shot, but it wasn't a big deal. It was minor. He had gotten pinned down by David Koresh and his followers. He was, like, hiding behind a tree. Now, as a result of this, David Koresh and the 7 people that had accompanied him on this little raid here were charged with attempted murder. But they all got acquitted, except for David Koresh, in which case it was a mistrial. But they all got away with it, essentially. So they were all shooting at each other.
Self-defense.
No charges were filed. You know what I mean? I mean, they were, but oh no.
Because New Zealand is like going, what? What are you talking about?
Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah.
Oh no. Am I still on?
Yeah, it looks like it. Well,
okay.
No, you're still talking.
No, it came back. Okay.
It came back.
Oh,
this
no,
shit's
no,
kind
no.
of hanging up.
No. Why? Oh.
Just let it go. Did you close it?
No.
Just let it go.
Come on.